Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hi. I can see some of you are there already. Okay, so yeah, let's start. So, so how are you doing? So, any questions? Have you guys started looking at the
Sir,
assignment? Yeah,
actually, I wanted to ask if I submit the assignment today, but I
yeah,
want to make changes later on, will that be possible?
yeah. That is possible. I think Classroom
Because,
allows that.
okay, so I can submit the assignment and do mark as done right now, but
Yeah,
okay, sir, because like I'm out for a bit, like for some time. I have done the assignment, but
sure.
I was like, I want to just submit it just in case if I don't get time later on. But
Yeah,
if I get time, I want to recheck it later on.
yeah. I'm sure Classroom allows that.
Yeah, okay, sir. Thank you.
What about the rest of you? Have you guys looked at it? Looked at the
Sir,
assignment? Yeah.
sir, I have a doubt in the heap. So you have told in that the deletion process over there takes login order of login steps.
Right.
But but we assume that we know the position of the element to be deleted.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I assume that you know the position of the element will be there. I have not told that finding the position. Right.
So if we start from like if we are given just an element and we have to delete it from the heap, then we take order n, right?
That will take order n.
Okay, sir.
If I look for the whole thing, okay, you
Hmm.
go and finding out that element in the wherever the heap location is, that will take order n. But I mean, in particularly, if I just tell you that okay, give me the minimum, right? You know that the minimum is on the top of the heap, so that is something that you know, right?
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
one you can delete using this login steps.
Yes, sir.
But one of you asked me a question. I don't remember who sent a classroom question in the classroom that to construct a heap from scratch, does it take order n or order n log n? Now, the way I have described it, it takes order n log n. Okay, but actually there is a nice way of doing it which takes order n steps only. Okay, I have not done it. You can take a look at it in the book or in the online. But for the case of the heap sort, you don't. That is not that use that improvement is not something that is necessary from order n log n to order n. But yeah, you can construct a heap in order n steps. Uh,
Sir, I have another doubt in the assignment.
sure.
In the can you explain the last question? Means I can't understand it. The half of the n factor inputs.
Uh, I have to look at the question. I don't remember the question itself. Okay. Show that there is no comparison sort that whose running time is linear for at least half of the n factorial. Okay, so basically the idea is that say I am not interested in say sorting the I'm not interested in the worst case runtime. Okay, there are n factorial possible permutations of the input, right?
Hmm.
I just want you to come up with a algorithm, a comparison based algorithm that will sort for half of the possible partitions in order n steps. For the remaining half of them, okay, it can take whatever time, maybe n square. Okay, so the worst case runtime will be order n square. And it is not the average case runtime also I'm not saying, but I'm saying that for half of the possible permutations, the turn time taken is order n. Is that possible?
Okay.
Okay. I mean, the average is something nice stuff. So maybe for the other half number of other half kind of inputs, type of inputs, other half partitions, the runtime can be even worse than n square. Can be maybe n cube or something.
And the second part, the fraction of 1 by n of the inputs, it should have efficient runtime for, means 1 by 10 of 1 by n of.
Right. 1 by n of them.
Okay, sir.
Yes. It will have an efficient algorithm run of 1 by n of them.
And sir, in any question, for using an algorithm to solve any of the assignment problems, can we allocate as much memory as we want? Is there any
I mean,
upper bound on the memory?
If I just want time complexity, you can allocate any memory. Okay. If I am just saying that, okay, you have to do it in this many number of steps, then I am just interested in the time complexity, not the memory complexity, or space complexity. So you can use as much memory as you want. But
Thank you, sir.
see, this is that we will do later on. But the total amount of memory that you can use at most is always less than the runtime. Because to allocate the memory, if you actually end up using the memory, right? So you have
Yes, sir.
allocated say n square memory, and
Right.
if you end up using that n square memory, right?
Yes.
It would mean that you will be the total number of steps also will be more than n square, right? So the space
Okay.
complexity is
Okay,
always less than the time complexity.
Okay, sir.
Okay, for anything, for any algorithm, space complexity is always less than the time complexity.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, in counting sort algorithm,
yeah,
if we have to sort say n elements and
Yeah.
we are given a range say 1 to r,
right.
okay, then the time complexity will be order of n, right?
Good. So this is something that I will be doing it just today only. So, mm,
This is because
so
we
you will
can
be
maintain
requiring
an
order n steps, right?
uh,
So what will you do? You will go over the whole input,
Huh.
right?
Hmm.
And you will be counting the total labels in some sense, right? So
we will count the frequency of each
frequency of
element.
all the R of them, right?
Mhm.
Now, after you are done with it,
Hmm.
right, you will go over all the R possible frequency stuffs and accordingly output it,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So the total complexity will be order n for the first round that you go, right? And order R for the second round
For creating the output n.
for creating the output thing, right? So the total number of steps will be order n plus R.
Achha, achha.
So for example, if I tell you that, oh, see here there are n objects and I am guaranteeing you that all the elements are between 1 and million. Okay. Now, even if the n is very small, right? Maybe n is just 1000.
Huh.
Now the numbers are between 1 and million, right? Then you would take something like 1 million, because you will be storing, you will be going over the 1000 numbers, counting the frequencies, updating the frequency of the 1 million possible labels, right? Or 1 million possible numbers. And then you will go over the 1 million possible labels and then outputting it accordingly. Right? So it is an order n plus r. So the r matters in some sense. R cannot be too low, too large.
Okay.
Is it clear? Okay, some more questions?
Sir, in question one,
Yeah,
one involving merging k-sorted arrays.
right.
So I'm having difficulty computing the complexity
Okay.
because the arrays are unequal.
Arrays are unequal. So let's start with arrays are equal. And
Yeah,
let's see.
in that case, I'm done.
Okay.
But like unequal case, it's a bit difficult to prove that the complexity is n log k.
Yeah. So you have to assume that. Hmm, okay. I mean, why don't you assume that these arrays are of size A1 to AK and then try to prove it? All right. Okay. In terms of the A1 to AK.
Okay, so
It should not be too hard. Some more? Any more questions? No more questions? So let me share my screen and you guys can see it now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I mean, so to start with, so let's just kind of recollect what we did for the sorting. So we had this comparison sort, and there we had order actually what we call is as theta n log n, because we had algorithms that takes worst case n log n steps, and we also kind of saw that the lower bound is n log n, right? Now for the non-comparison sorts, right, we saw counting sort. Note that this is non-comparison sort, okay? This is not a comparison sort. Because here we know that we can do something. We know that the data has some nice structure. They're all numbers, and these numbers are between 1 and R and all. And here's the idea that I just now described, that if we know that the elements, if elements are from say 1 to R, okay, I mean I should write sets, okay, 1 to these integers say 1 to R. It doesn't have to be any integer, it can be any discrete set of size R. Then what you can do is that you can go over the whole string, whole input, and kind of compute the frequency and accordingly output the output, right? And this takes order n plus R steps. Okay. So any questions so far? So note that this is not any problem. Okay. So this is order n plus R is much smaller than order n log n, but we are assuming something very strong, right? That all the elements are coming from a R element set. Fine. In the case of comparison sort, there was no such thing. Comparison sort, these n elements could have come from anywhere you want, right? Now there is another another sorting technique. It's called the bucket sort. Now, what is bucket sort? The bucket sort is actually kind of similar to comparison sort, but what you can do is this following. Okay, what you can do is that you can, so you have this array, right? Say you have this array, and say this is an array of some number between 1 and m. Okay, so the elements are from 1 to m. Okay. So say m is 100, say. Okay, so you have something like 9, you have 52, you have 1, you have 31, you have 3, you have 4, you have 90, you have 42, 39, 63, you have 18, and so on, right? So what you can do is that you can create some buckets, okay? You can create buckets. How many buckets? That is up to you, okay? You create k buckets. So in this case, from us, say let's create 3 buckets. Or maybe let's create, 3 buckets. And the idea is that I want to keep all the elements that are between 1 to 33 over here, all the elements that are from 34 to say 66 here, and from 67 to 100 over here. So it means that I am kind of just going to move things, okay? So say 9, okay, fine, good, 9 goes here. 52 goes here. Okay, 1 goes here. 31 also goes here. 3 also goes here. Okay, 4 also goes here. 90, okay, good, 90 goes here. 42 goes here. 39 goes here. 63 goes here. 18 goes here. Okay. So I have now created these 3 buckets, right? I will partition this whole thing in 3 buckets. And now all I need to do is that I need to sort the buckets, right? Sort each bucket. And then, see, note that this bucket is, of course, I know occurs before this bucket, right? And this bucket occurs before this bucket. So all I need to do is that then I just need to add them together, right? Then add or concatenate them together instead of, right? I mean, like, yeah. Right. So of course, what sorting algorithm do I use? That is again up to me. I can use, say, merge sort. I can use even insertion sort. I can do some very simple things, and whatever I do, I get a particular. I will have a proper algorithm, right? Now, I have left a few things that I have not specified exactly. This one. Namely, what is the number of, what is the k in terms of m, right? And more importantly, what is the worst case analysis? Can you say what is the worst case analysis?
N log n.
It would be n log n, because I mean, in the worst case, maybe all of them comes in a single bucket. Right, all of them might just come in a single bucket, and then I have no idea. Fine, and then I've not gained anything. I've looked at the whole thing and I put it in a single bucket, and then okay, I need to sort them out, and that was exactly what I started with. But if now I assume, okay, let's say I assume that every element is drawn uniformly at random from 1 to m. Okay, I mean from integers 1 to m. Okay, so that means from we said 1 to, in that case, then what is the expected runtime of the bucket store? Now, of course, this runtime will be a function of n, m, and k, right? I want you guys to go and think about this and try to prove it. So you guys should be able to compute it exactly. And then you can see how to minimize this object. What value of k can you keep in terms of m and n, who should minimize this object. Okay. So this is a question that I want you guys to go and answer for yourself. It's a very simple. Note that this is slightly different from the expected runtime of the quicksort algorithm. Why? In the quicksort algorithm, the input was anything that you can give me, right? The algorithm brought his own randomness. The algorithm itself had some randomness, right? It was picking a random pivot and so on. But here, the algorithm is not random. The algorithm is deterministic. But the input we are thinking of is random. Okay. Now this is slightly different, and this is also used quite a lot in practice, because if you expect that what you will realize is that, I mean, just like here, as somebody pointed out, that the bucket sort worst case is when everything goes into one single say bucket. You can kind of imagine that the best case of bucket sort is kind of when it kind of splits up equally between the buckets, right? And so if you kind of are working on a particular set of elements, but the distribution is kind of uniform, it doesn't have to be completely uniform, it has to be kind of uniform, then also you can prove that the expected runtime of the bucket sort can be very low. Okay, can be very, very low. Of course, it will take some space. Space will be something like order n, but that's okay. But okay, the expected runtime will be pretty low. So this is also one more technique that is used a lot. When you have to just sort out a set of numbers, and they are kind of coming uniformly, I mean, coming from the uniformly on the range, then you can use something like bucket sort to achieve this. So although this question is does not been given as a input, has been not given as an assignment, but I would like you guys to try to do it as an assignment, if possible. By the way, I mean, is any of the TAs around? Chandrima, are you there? No.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chandrima, can you take a note of this?
Yeah.
Okay, and then maybe you can upload it at some point of time.
Sure.
Okay. So any more questions? Any questions on whatever we have done on this bucket sort? Okay. So if not, let's go to one more thing, the last of the sorting techniques, and that will be kind of the end of this sorting long run of sorting, and that is called a radix sort. Now, radix sort is something that has been, yeah.
Sir, in the above question, when we are finding the expected runtime, are we keeping the k also random or the k is fixed?
No. K is fixed. So when you do this kind of, when you do this analysis, okay, when you compute this runtime in terms of m, n, and k, you will realize what is the value of k that you need to take so that this runtime is minimized.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I can even give you some hints. So this runtime will be independent of m. Okay. And what you will realize is that if you take k to be something of the order of or theta of n, then you can get this total expected runtime to be just order of n. Okay. So I mean, yeah. So you do this, you compute this function, and then you will see how you can fix the correct k, and you can do it. So this algorithm is completely deterministic. M, N, everything is kind of it's kind of determined. I mean, it's kind of already fixed. Okay.
Sir, in the counting sort algorithm,
Yeah.
we need too much space, right?
We need not too much space. Okay, how much space do you need? Say, you have this frequency R, right?
Yeah.
And for each of them, at the worst, you know that there can be n of them, right? The frequency can be at most be n. So storing that frequency, it is order, I mean, n order log n, right? So the space complexity will become R times n log n. Sorry, R times log n.
But when we give the output,
Yes.
then also
Yes.
we have to create another array of
Array, right.
length.
Yeah, so it will be order n plus R log n. You're right.
So it is greater than the previous algorithm.
Right. In some sense, you're right. I mean, yeah, but this is not something. Yeah, again, I mean, here we are not trying to optimize the space that much. We are more interested in the time complexity. You see, we are beating this comparison sorting time complexity, right? So we are kind of beating the time complexity here, and that's the main idea.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? So let's see. I mean, so this is something that is, I mean, I don't know whether you guys have thought about it or not, but this radix sort is possibly the most obvious algorithm that could have been thought about by you guys. Okay. Say I have given you some numbers, say 100, 209, 408, 292, 318, 108, 99, 17, and so on. If I give you this set of numbers, how would you have sorted it? If I have given you these numbers, how would you have sorted it? Any suggestions?
Look at the hundreds place first.
Exactly. So you would have first sorted, or not sorted, but kind of sorted in some sense, kind of sorted by the 100th place. Actually, not 100th place, like the third digit or the most significant digit. So something like, okay, good. So I mean, I will go over it, and I know that the most significant digits can only be some 0 to 9, right? So I will keep on accordingly placing them somewhere here. Actually, maybe I should have just placed it here. Right? And now I have got at most how many? I have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe I will have got at most 9 buckets, right? And we know that you have almost kind of done the bucketing algorithm. Now I need to sort out each of these buckets.
At most 10.
Oh, sorry, at most 10. See, I'm pretty bad at counting here. So at most 10 buckets, and I should have sorted out on each of the buckets. And now sorting out each of the bucket, how much time will I take? Once again, I have to go over. So, okay, how much time has I spent so far? Total amount of time I have spent so far is just order n. I have just gone over the list and I have split it up into 10 buckets. Now say I have got the n1 elements here, n2 elements here, n3 elements here, n4 elements here, n5 elements here, and so on. Now in the next round, I need to sort each and individual buckets. So what do I do next? Inside this bucket, I sort by the next significant digit, right? And how do I do it? I do it again the same way, right? I again bucket it up. So I just have to go over it and go and spend this time. So how much time do I have taken for this bucket? For this bucket, I would have gone over all the n1 elements and I should have bucketed it in again 10 elements, 10 objects. Similarly here, similarly here, similarly here. So the total number of time taken is ordered again n1 plus n2 plus n10, which is nothing but order n. And then I would have gone for the next significant bit, right? And I continued like that. So in other words, the total number of steps is order n times w, where w is the number of digits. Right? So note that this is kind of very interesting. So if say W is say, you know that you have all the digits that are, so I have told you that I have given you n numbers of at most 10 digits, right? Then what does it mean? It means that the numbers are between 1, 2 till 2 to the power 10, or rather 10 to the power 10, right? So if you had used counting sort, you would have taken order n plus 10 to the power 10. But if you had used radix sort, you would have taken order 10 times n. Now, of course, it depends on n, whatever that n is. But if the n is not too much, right, then you can see that radix sort can be much more faster, right?
So in the derivation of order nw,
Yes.
means if you can here, right here, you have written order of n plus order of n1 plus n2, but it shouldn't be order of n plus 10 plus order of n1 plus 10 order plus n2 plus 10.
Actually, it will not be
Like,
order of n from 10. See, look at this one. It will be just the n of them, right? So only thing is that what can happen. So I will go over them. Yeah. So at the end, you might say that this should be plus 10 at most. Why? See, I'll go over each of the bucket and I will sort it. Right? So if I go to the first bucket and I will spend n1 time. Then I'll go to the second bucket, I will spend n2 times. I'll go to the third bucket, I will spend n3 times. I'll go to the fourth bucket, I will spend n4 times. I'll go to the fifth bucket, I spend n5 times. But I'll go to the sixth bucket, but then I don't spend n6 times because n6 times is 0, right? But I have gone to the sixth bucket, right? So that's one step. Then I'll go to the seventh bucket, and that will also take one step. And I have to realize that there is nothing in there. So that means I will have to go over all of them. So that's why there will be unordered, just a 10 sitting there. Will be for each of the buckets where there exists some element, I will take n1 time, ni time. And for the buckets where there is nothing there, I will take at least constant number of them.
oh, the plus 10 will occur only once.
Plus 10 will occur, say order 1 for each of the empty things, you can say.
Okay, sir, I get it.
Okay, so that is not something too much. I mean, this will be, if you do the addition, you will realize that this will just be plus order W, and plus order W is not something, is quite insignificant compared to order N.
Okay, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is radix sort. This is possibly the most obvious sorting algorithm for any numbers or anything when there is a concept of what we call as, I don't know whether you have heard of this name or not before.
Lexicographic.
Yes, lexicographic ordering. Have you heard of it earlier?
Yes, sir.
Achha, very good. If you have lexicographic ordering, then this is what you, then this radix sort will do a great job. Okay. Okay, nice. So this will kind of bring us to the end of our sorting algorithm stuff. All the possible sorting algorithms, I mean, not all, of course, but quite a few of them we have seen. And please let me know if there is any doubt so far. No doubt so far? I mean, of course, you can feel free to go over it and go over everything that has been discussed and work out your assignments. Although the assignments have been deferred by some time because of people have been asking for the extension. By the way, who asked for the extension? Someone wrote a mail for the extension.
Sir,
Okay, yeah. So you have so this is because of some other assignment that you have submitted.
Sir, we were given the demography assignment just 1 day prior to the assignment given by you, and it had to be typed and submit. Means
Yes,
kind of
submit by when?
Means I guess the 1 day before the submission date of your assignment.
Okay. Okay, fine. I mean, I have no problem. I am not stickler to time as such. So if you guys want some more time, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, I mean, it should not be that. I mean, the assignments is been given mostly so that you can keep in touch with the classes. Okay, as the classes will suddenly go way faster than what you expect. Okay, so please, yeah. I mean, you guys should be used to submitting multiple assignments in one shot, right? Okay, so
Sir,
yeah.
how do we count the time complexity of counting sort? It is
Oh,
n.
so the counting sort. So what do I do in the counting sort? We are basically going over all the. So we have two elements, two steps, right? We go over all the elements and count the frequency, right? So
Yes,
every
sir.
time I see an element, I see an element I go to the frequency of f of I and I increment it by 1, right?
Yes, sir.
So that the whole process of incrementing f of I and all takes order, I mean a constant number of steps, right?
Yes, sir.
So for each of the element we are spending constant number of steps. So that means for going over and incrementing all of it, all I'm taking is computing the frequency. I am going to take just order n steps. Fine.
Yes, sir.
And I am actually here I'm using a fact that I kind of not specifically told, that when I am seeing the element I can jump to the f of I and increment it. So I am actually saying that the elements are the integers, and I have basically I'm storing another array in some sense you can think of. Okay, you are storing another array of 1 to R where the frequencies are being stored. So when I'm seeing that element I, I'm going to f of I and I'm incrementing that f of I. Okay, so that is what I'm doing. So now that takes order n steps. Now after I have done the frequency, I have to go over this array, right? I have to go over this array. If I see that, oh, see this first one has frequency 3, then I will output 1 3 times. Right?
Yes, sir.
I will go to the next one. I will see again frequency 2. Then I will output it 2 times. Right? But now if I see a frequency 0, right? I will not output anything. But I am already spending 1 step for going over this frequency. Right? Similarly, the next frequency that I am going. So for outputting, I have to go over all of these numbers, right? So total number of how much things that I'm outputting again is order n, but I have to go over the whole list, which is maybe 0 in many places, but that is order R. So the total, you can think of this one as maybe this is how I should write it here, not like this, but the first thing takes order n, and the second step thinks order n plus R. I mean, overall, it is of course order n plus R. Is it clear?
We take the, I mean, for going over the first array, we take order of n steps.
Yeah.
And then for outputting the second array, we take order of R steps.
Order n plus R steps. Because see, again, we have to output them, right? We have to output 1 3 times, we have to output 2 times, and so on, right? So that will take an order n steps, right? But then there will be order. So again, just like how I kind of told in the last time, right? In the case of the radix sort, let's say the n has been split up, right? So the frequencies is now what? F of 1, f of 2, till f of R, right? So the total time taken is summation of the frequencies, right? Maybe how you can see of how, yeah. Maybe I should write it here. So the runtime or the number of steps in counting sort is summation of, see, I mean, maybe this is how you should look at it. For f of I, right, the frequency of I, but at every time, I'm not only spending f of I, but I'm spending at least a constant number of steps to go and check whether what is the frequency, right? So it is order of 1. Or maybe I just can, for now, just let me write just of 1 steps. Okay. And so this is nothing but summation of I f of I plus summation of I of 1, which is summation of I f of I is n, and this is R. Right?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
in the radix sort,
Yeah.
so you told that in the last we'll have an order of means plus only plus 10 will be in the only means at the last.
Right.
So I was asking that when we are sorting with respect to the most significant digit, we are using means how we are sorting that we are using counting sort, right? Means
We are
what?
kind of bucketing it. We are just bucketing. We are not counting it. We are just putting it in the correct buckets. In the most significant digit, we are not sorting. We are just basically think of it that you are there and you have 10 friends. Okay. So what you do is that you have the numbers and you give all the first friend, you give all the numbers which has most significant digit 0. Second bit you give a second friend, you give all the numbers which has most significant bit 1 and so on, and you ask them to solve. Okay, you just basically bucket them into parts and then recursively sort out those buckets. So radix sort is kind of a recursive algorithm. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is kind of, it is a bucket sort. Radix sort is basically a special instantiation of the bucket sort, where you bucket them and then you kind of sort each bucket. Any more questions? But yeah, I am seeing today that the participants number has really decreased. Do you have guys any idea about that? You have 35 of you, and today is 27. So like 8 of you are not there. Can somebody shed some light on that? I mean, feel free to say whatever. I mean, like if they are finding it too trivial or something like that or something, I'll be happy to take that. Uh, yeah, I mean, take the feedbacks. Or if they're finding it too hard or something. Nobody has any idea why they are not coming? Okay. Anyways, okay. So as I told you, so this ends the sorting algorithm stuff. Okay. So in the next class, we will start something much more interesting. So I will tell a little bit on that. But before that, I just want to go into the next stuff, which is graphs. Right? Now, all of you know graphs, right? So what is a graph? A graph is a set of vertices and a set of edges. Right? That's a simple graph. And what are the set of edges? So edges are nothing but a subset of V cross V, right? But you have this few things. You have the undirected graphs. What does it mean? That means UV is in the edge implies VU is in the edge. You can think of it this way. So it has no particular direction. You have the directed graph. In that case, you don't have it, when there can be a direction from one vertex to the other, or that means it is very much possible that one of UV and VU is in the edge and not the other one. And there is something called a weighted graph. What is a weighted graph? Okay, it can have a multiple different things of weighted graph, but let's define it as something called an edge weighted graph. It is a graph which has a vertex, edge, and the W, but the W is nothing but a kind of a edge weight on the edges. So these two real numbers. So something like, say we have the map of a city, right? In the map of a city, you have these vertices, maybe they are the intersection of the roads, and you have edges kind of saying that which way the roads can go, right? And if you have ever used something like, say, Google Maps, then you will see that there is some kind of a time required for each of them for going from, say, this vertex to this vertex. So there is a edge weight like 4, 3, 2. So this maybe represent the say minutes required to travel or something like that. Maybe the congestion and all. So this is the map. This is a directed weighted graph. Are you all of you are familiar with these things? I went very fast on this one, but I'm just hoping that you guys have seen it. If you have not
Yes,
seen
sir.
it, please tell me. You've all seen it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So from the next class, we will be working on graphs. Okay. In particular, we will start on something called finding the shortest path between two vertices. Okay. If I have sent U and V, and I'll tell you, can you compute the shortest path between U to V? This is the kind of question that we will be asking. Okay. And you can, but have you guys done modeling on graphs? Meaning problems on problems that not necessarily looks like graphs, but using graphs to model the problem?
Sir, can you give a small example of that?
Can you get a small example of that? Say, for example, mm, uh, say, okay, let me just think of it. Yeah. So say you have say you are a manager in a in an institute. Say something like that in a company, and you have been told that there are meetings. Okay, there are a number of meetings. So and the meeting start time, they have a start time and there have an end time. Okay, so there are various meetings that are there. Okay, so there will be S1 to T1, there are S2 to T2, and so on and so forth. There are quite a number of such meetings are there. And now your goal is to assign the meetings to different rooms, such that, of course, what is the such that? Such that no meeting clashes. And of course, you want to minimize the number of rooms. How do you do it? How do you solve it? You guys have not seen any of that, this kind of stuff?
No, sir.
No,
No?
sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, so maybe I will give you a collection of problems that will kind of help you in understanding this thing. But see, the reason I mean, okay, so good. Now I got to know what you know and what you don't know. But let me ask you a simple question, okay? Why do you think we study graphs? Why do you study graphs? See, the graphs are basically nothing but a very compact representation of relations of between two elements, pairwise relations, right? It's basically a pairwise relation stuff. And useful thing is that many problems, and this is something what things are, that many problems, and by when I mean problems, I'm not just meaning theoretical problems or something, many real life problems also, okay, can be casted into a graph problem. Okay. Yeah, actually I have a very nice set of slides that I have. Maybe I will use it at some point of time. Okay, so that means, say for example, if Google wants to find out the shortest path between your home to some other place, it actually solves the problem on a graph. Okay, if you try to say how do I say? If say when a company decides, when say Airtel decides to where to put up a tower so as to kind of maximize the set of people that they can uh, I mean offer say 4G network and all. They are actually solving a graph problem. Okay, and these graph problems therefore becomes like, so of course see, it is very hard for anybody to come and solve every problem individually, right? So instead what we do is that we study these abstract graph problems. We study these abstract graph problems and they help us to solve this problem. Okay, I know that this is not making much sense to you guys, because unless I give you examples, how will it work? So, okay, let me see. I will try to give you a set of slides. I think I will upload the set of slides, or maybe even ask our TS. So, is it fine if you guys can meet up in Saturday sometime this week? Saturday, can we have a class? Saturday at say something like at 11:30 to 12:30. I mean, that's the standard time, that was the scheduled time. Can you have an extra class this time, this week? Hello?
So I am fine with it, but like rest of the people, I don't know about.
Okay, fine. So if people are not saying no, I'm assuming that this is fine. So it will be a kind of class where we will be using this thing, which we call modeling. Okay, modeling in graphs. So you'll see the importance of graph theory. Okay, and why do we need to study graph theory as it's called? Okay. And I mean, this is just kind of, I mean, I know that you guys did discrete maths from the point of view because you had to do discrete maths kind of stuff like that, or graph theory because you had to do graph theory for your course. But actually, there is a much stronger reason to study graphs. And it will help us to solve a lot and lot of problems, interesting problems. So I will ask my TS to kind of conduct one such class. Okay. So this Saturday at 11:30, there will be an extra class on modeling using graphs. Okay, either I will take it or my TS will take it. Fine. Okay. But I must still continue what I was discussing today. That okay. Okay. So these graphs are very interesting objects, which we will for certain establish in the next class. But one important thing that I want to focus in this class is that how is a graph represented? Or the graph, I have drawn a picture, right? But how is a graph represented? How do you represent a graph? Okay. So there are, I mean, of course, you can represent it as a set, no doubt about that. But there are two ways of representing a graph. Two major ways of representing a graph. And this is something that we will need. Because see, we are talking about algorithms, right? So it's very important that how are the graph input given. See, let me draw something. Okay, so here is the graph. Okay, say 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the way in which I can represent it is one object is that I will draw a matrix. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And of course, I mean, what I will represent here, so this is the matrix G, where Gij equals to 1 if Ij is in the edge set. So 1 to 3 there is an edge, 1 to 2 there is an edge, 1 to 4 there is an edge. 2 to 1 there is an edge, 2 to 4 there is an edge, 2 to 3 there is no edge. 3 to 2, 1 there is an edge, 3 to 4 there is an edge, and 4 to 1 there is an edge, 4 to 2 there is an edge, 4 to 3 there is an edge. Of course, the diagonals is kind of not very clear. You can put in whatever I want. I sometimes, depending on, the diagonals, I will not say anything what to put. Okay, the diagonals are something, maybe you can mark it out or something, doesn't matter. But the remaining places you put 0. So this is what we call as a adjacency matrix. Okay. A graph can be represented as an adjacency matrix. Note that even if it is directed graph, we could have done the same thing, except if it is a non-directed graph, it is an undirected graph, then it would be symmetric. And if it is not an undirected graph, it's a directed graph, then it may not be symmetric. And if it is a weighted graph, then instead of 1, I would have put up the weight on that edge. Whatever that weight on that edge is, I will put it up, write it there. So this is a very compact way of representing a graph. Okay. Now a graph has two major parameters. They have the number of vertices that is usually represented as n, and the number of edges that is usually represented as m. So what is the size of an adjacency matrix? It will be, of course, n square. Right? So any graph on n vertices can be represented using an n square size adjacency matrix. Now, but there is one issue about it, that the edge, number of edges, m, can of course be much smaller than n square. So in that case, this adjacency matrix seems to be a bad way of writing it. Okay? So instead what we can do is this second option. So maybe write down once again this graph that was there. So there, what we do is that we write it as we write the vertices as 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, from each of the vertex, there is something hanging. What all hangs? This is where it hangs. What all edges does it have to? So one has an edge to 2, one has an edge to 3, one has an edge to 4, and then finally when it says that, oh, that's the end of the list. Okay, so say 2 has an edge to 1, 2 has an edge to 4, and that's it. So this last number that you can see, it's like a marker to indicate that that's it. There is no more things beyond that. Similarly, 3 has an edge to 1, 3 has an edge to 4, and nothing there. And 4 has an edge to 1, 4 has an edge to 2, 4 has an edge to 3, and nothing. So this is another way of writing it. Okay. So here, if you want to know if there is an edge from 3 to something, what you have to do? You have to go to the third the position of the first array and then go down this array. Okay. Note that here, to check whether does 4 has an edge to 3 has an edge to 2, you have to go to 3 and then you have to walk down this array, right? So it is not a one-step process. So in the case of adjacency matrix, using just one step, you can check if there's an edge from 3 to 2. But here that is not the case. Here you have to go to 3 and then you have to go and look for it. But the interesting part is that what is the size of this object? Note that this one has size order n. Each of them, how big is this? These are nothing but the degree of, right? So these are the degree of 1, degree of 2, the degree of 4. And what you should be remembering from your earlier discrete math course, the summation of the degree is equals to 2 times the number of edges. So this is 2 times m. So this object is 2 times m. So this is what is known as a adjacency list. So earlier one was the adjacency matrix and this is known as the adjacency list. And here you can, this one has size order m plus n. Okay. So this is possibly the most compact way of representing a graph. Whether the graph is how, I mean, this is like order m plus n and this is order n square, right? But both of these objects has some very nice useful structure. Okay. Now, have you guys seen this thing before? Hello.
Sir, adjacency list we have not seen before.
Oh, adjacency list you have not seen before. Okay. Okay, but the adjacency list is actually what we will be using more often in our algorithms. Okay, because this one, so when we will say that, oh, here is an, I will define you or give you an algorithm whose number of steps is linear in the graph, linear in the input, I will mean the input is order m plus n, not order n square. Okay, so here I should write it. Usually, we assume the graph is given as a adjacency list. So for example, you know that this is a wave graph. The wave graph is basically the graph that is like you have all the possible internet sites on the world, and there is a edge from a particular site to another site. If there's a link from this site to that site, right? Now this site, this wave graph has a huge number of nodes. But on an average, this wave graph's degree is pretty sparse. Okay, degree is like some constant. Every site at most have something like some hundred different links to other sites. So which means that this m is just some 100 times n, but the n is massive. So in such a situation, you can imagine that why should we store the graph? Why does Google or any of them store the graph as order n square? Instead, they would store it as an adjacency list in order m plus n. Okay. So, okay, by the way, so I shall stop here now, but I would, the one thing that I want to say to you guys is that if you go to the course web page, where is this course web page? Sorry. Right. If you go to this course web page, what you will see is that from the next week, we start from something called this finding shortest path and finding minimum spanning tree. And it is from the subsections of 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5 of Kleinberg-Tardos, the book that has been assigned for this course. Okay. So what I want you guys is that to read this 4.1, 4.2, I mean, slowly go over this book, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5. Again, we will be using this classes to kind of help you in understanding this stuff, or I will provide some additional videos here and there, but it is, you have to read it from you for your, you have to read it beforehand. Okay, so I want you guys to start reading it. It starts with the finding shortest path. In other words, in the, in this graph, if I have given u and v, how do you find the shortest path between u and v? So that is the start of it. Okay, I really want you guys to, maybe I should stop it. Yeah, I want you guys to read it, try to understand it. These concepts are not hard, but we will of course discuss it in class, and we will anyway have a different class on Saturday to discuss the various modeling of graphs. That will be very interesting and useful. Okay, and yeah, so from now on we will be following the Kleinberg-Tardos almost religiously, and you guys will have to do a lot more reading. And we will be discussing it in the class. Okay, so any questions of whatever has been done today? Hello.
Sir, for finding out the for doing the average case analysis of the bucket sort that you mentioned,
Right.
sir, will we assume uniform distribution in the k fixed buckets or something like that?
Yes, kind of. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, you can say that. I mean, so if the elements are drawn uniformly, that means it will be kind of being spread in the on the bucket. And probability that an element goes into any of the k buckets is same.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, another question that I would, not a question, but another thing that I would ask you guys to really do, please. So I can see that there are 30 participants today, which means that excluding me and Chandrima, who is the TA, that would be 28. So that means 7 of you are not there. Can you guys please find out what's going on? I mean, if they're not coming just because of that, that's fine with me. But if they are not coming because they are finding it too easy or too hard, please let me know. And if they're not coming because of some internet issue, also please kind of can let me know. Is there a kind of a class representative here? You have a class representative, right? You don't have class representative in your BSTEP
No.
program?
Sir.
Yeah.
No, sir, we don't.
Oh, you don't have any class representative. Okay, fine. Anyways, I mean, please go and please. I mean, you guys must be friends with this all of your friends, right? So, yeah, please try to find out what's going on. So, 7 students in a class is a big number. Okay, good. So we will meet again on Saturday at 11:30. And okay. So
Thank you, sir.